Today on Locked On Canadiens, we watched this game so you wouldn't have to, and you're going to be glad we did.
You're Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Locked On Canadiens. It is very late, but we are here to recap that game against Seattle. We will always be here for you because we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where you get your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcast, as well as on YouTube. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $200 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Laura Sab, also known as the Active Stick, and I'm joined as always by the wonderful Ian Poivre, also known as Maybe It's Ian. It is very late. You will see that I still have the waffle robe gimmick going, but Ian chooses not to participate in gimmicks tonight because the Habs did not deserve it.
Well, I want to be perfectly crystal clear with our listeners. I made a promise in the last episode, which was when you asked me, are you going to wear it again after the Seattle game? I said, if they win. And that they did not do. I was ready to hold up my look. It's right here. I was ready to hold up my end of the bargain. They blew it. So no. So if you're mad that I'm not wearing the UP cosplay, you can be mad at David Savard and Arbor Xhekaj and whatever. It's not my fault.
All right. So here's how it's going to go today. Like, that third pairing was very tough to watch. We are going to talk about that in the second segment because the Canadiens do need some solutions, especially now that the trade deadline is over. But also there were a lot of Habs that had a really strong game. So we're going to talk about that in the final segment because we want to leave everybody with an uplifted mood. But first, let's go over the game overall. And before I forget, everyone, tomorrow is our mailbag episode. So please send your mailbag questions to lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can also hit us up on social media. You know where to find us. And please send us mailbag questions. We have a couple already in the pool, I guess, in the mailbag. Please send us some more. All right. So first period, I was not paying as much attention as you were for that first period. You said that the Canadiens did not play really well, and it was very evident that this was the second night of a back-to-back.
Yeah, and I think that was by design for the Kraken. I think the Kraken decided these guys just played. They just got in here. The Kraken haven't played since, I think they said Sunday, so they've been off for a while.
Must be nice.
Yeah, it must be nice. I think that should be against the rules, to be quite honest. Like that, okay, Montreal is on a back-to-back with travel 3 time zones away, and the team they're playing against has been rested for 2 days. That's to me, just Montreal getting a point out of that should be enough. But it's after 1 a.m, so I think I am allowed to be upset with how this game ended. But
yes, of course.
Yes, I think the Kraken tried to run Montreal out of the rink early. And it was a miracle the Canadiens were down 1 after the first period. Dobish was great. The Kraken hit a bajillion goalposts, and Montreal was just a step behind every single play.
Yeah.
They then get into the second period, and they draw a power play. I will say both the Canadiens' power plays were drawn by Jake Evans, just going deep into the Kraken territory and getting tripped. Patrick Laine returns. All of you who spent the last few days completely burying this guy because he had an illness, absolutely kick rocks, pound sand. Like, what are you thinking? The guy is still the guy. He had 2 points in this one. He's still the dude. I just wanted to get that out nice and early while we still have all that wonderful viewer retention. That Patrick Laine was exactly the guy that we've come to think of him as in this game.
Yes, absolutely. I think the point that you made about Patrick Laine a long time ago still stands. If you decided or determined that this player is not a good one, or his intentions are not in the right place, that's it. Nobody's changing your mind, right?
Yeah.
Whereas I thought it was a very welcome return into the lineup. So those of you who watched the game on RDS, they had a little montage of the times the Kraken hit the goalposts, ping.
What did they play it during the intermission, and it took up the entire intermission? It was wild how many times they hit the post.
It was a lot. All right. I think the Canadians did the insanity happened towards the end of the third period, right? Like it turned into a movie. It wasn't a game, it was a movie.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves a little bit because Montreal lost this game on the penalty kill late. They gave up 2 power play goals in the third period, and one of their strongest penalty killers in Yoel Armia did not play. He was out
Yes.
they listed it as an upper body injury. I believe Renaud Lavoie had it as a left hand injury, which makes sense. I remember watching the Vancouver game. He went to the bench. He was sitting on the bench, and he had his glove off of his left hand, and he was like clutching his fist over and over again. But he played the rest of the game because that's what these lunatics do. But yeah, that's probably what he's dealing with. They're hoping it's day to day. So hopefully we see him back sooner rather than later. But that played a big role in this, right? Like the
Yes.
penalty kill let them down, especially as the penalty kill, moved from down low to the point where a guy like Armia would be, attacking the puck carrier at the blue line. So they missed him a lot. It didn't look like that was going to be the case through the first 2 periods of the game, but in the third period, they could have used a guy like that. And it's a shame that their extra forward is not a guy who can play to that level. I thought Pizzetta was fine in this game, honestly.
Yeah.
It
He's
didn't.
he's had 2 games where I thought he was fine.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
did what I expect Michael Pizzetta to do, but that is much different than what we expect Yoel Armia to do, which is what the problem is with the Canadians. I wouldn't say depth because their lineup is very deep, but once you get out of their lineup and into the press box, it's not very deep. Like they don't
Correct.
actually in that for that game, the only one in the press box was Yoel Armia. So there's a problem there that they don't have the ability to cycle guys in and out of the lineup right now.
Yeah.
So hopefully next year that's not a thing because it can't be then. Now
Yeah.
it's kind of like, okay, whatever. But next year they cannot be doing that.
I wouldn't say it's necessarily whatever because the Canadians are still in the mix. They're still a point behind
Sure.
Columbus, right? But I did kind of want to talk about Armia because I feel like if any element of that line is missing, everything just falls apart. Like we thought that the glue was
True.
Emil Heineman. It's not.
Yeah.
It's just that line in general.
That line is
Um,
greater than the sum of its parts. It
yeah,
is. It
and
truly is.
yes, and late in the game, like I thought it was incredible because late in the game, like Marty had that team out to try and defend that 4-3 lead, and then he had that line out to try and get a goal before before the end of regulation.
Yeah,
So and I do appreciate that the Canadians did get a point. I just felt that there were 2 there for the taking, and
absolutely.
we got to talk about Brandon Montour first of all. Um, he looks like a character, or he looks like he should be a character on Game of Thrones. There's something about him. If anyone watched Game of Thrones, like there's something about him that like belongs in one of those families, one of those clans, or whatever we call them.
Yeah.
Um, but he's not just like a Habs killer. He massacres the Habs.
Yeah, and I don't get it. It doesn't really seem fair that Montreal plays this team twice, and he had a natural hat trick in the first game and followed it up with a 2-goal game, including the overtime winner. A defenseman, a
Yeah.
defenseman, by the way,
Yes. Yeah.
defenseman. He with that goal in overtime set the Kraken regular season record for goals in a season by a defenseman. So thankfully, it's not just us. However, Montreal being on the hook for 5 of those is hilarious. Like, no notes, 10 out of 10, really funny.
Really funny for you. I'm sitting here steaming. The steam is coming out of my ears. Any other things that we wanted to say about that game before we get into that third pairing, and then later on talk about lots of good things.
What do you think of Joshua Waugh? I've kind of had my eye on him over the last 2 games. I've been thoroughly whelmed. I think
Mhm.
it's not.
Yeah,
I think the speed is still a problem. The speed of the NHL. I think he thinks he has way more time to make decisions
then
than
he
he
does.
actually does,
Yeah,
and that's something that he's going to pick. You pick up the cadence of it, right?
yeah.
Juraj Slafkovsky is a perfect example of that. A guy that in the past thought he had all this time and really he didn't, and now he creates that time by using his body, getting space from guys. What else did you see in Joshua Waugh's game?
So for me, like I thought he was good the last 2 games, but I think my expectations for him are slightly adjusted.
Yeah,
Just in
it's
terms
fair.
of, like in my mind, this guy played his way out of NHL consideration, right? Then he went into Laval and he was inconsistent. So for me to see him be able to not do too much damage in the NHL is a plus, right? So
Yeah.
when he's doing anything that's like relatively neutral, like you're saying, thoroughly whelmed, when he's doing anything thoroughly neutral, I'm like, oh, he's having a good game.
Yeah, that line was a -2 pretty early.
Yeah,
But those 2 goals, the early goals on Dobish, where Dobish was behind the net, he played the puck out, or one time, the second time he missed it, and it just went to Eberle on the boards to Guy in the middle of the ice who shot it in the net.
yeah,
Like, it was that line really had nothing to do with the play that was happening. So it's a very unfortunate -2 early in
yeah.
that game for Joshua Waugh.
Yeah, but I think, like you said, he'll pick it up. Like
Yeah,
he needs more time in the NHL. He needs more minutes played in the NHL, which is the case with a lot of these guys.
yeah.
It's just, we don't know how many he's going to get. And we don't know if the Canadiens will change their mind, send someone else down, bring someone else back up once they're back in Montreal against the Florida Panthers. But we're going to get into a little bit of the defense and what we really did not like and what the Canadiens could potentially do about it. And that's coming up in just one moment. You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other sites. Indeed Sponsored Jobs puts your post at the top of the page and help you reach the right candidates faster. I've been in that spot where you need to hire like yesterday. The pressure's on, and every day without the right person is a setback. That's exactly when Indeed Sponsored Jobs comes in handy. They make sure your post is seen by the right candidates right now. Now, you can speed up your hiring process with a $75 sponsored job credit. Just go to indeed.com/locked on right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it is a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I first started using Monarch, I realized how much I was spending on all these little things that were so unnecessary. Now I budget smarter and I save so much more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. And that's so, so important, I find. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. You heard that right. Half off your first year at monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL. All right. I don't know if I should let you run with this third pair thing because I think we're both equally mad about it. I think we're mad about different things though. So let's just talk about how I don't think that there is any other way to explain it. The third pairing of the Habs defense cost the Canadians this game.
Yeah, two penalties late in the game. Xhekaj for the Yanni Newman goal. Also, that's the free square, free space, and this one was first NHL game for Yanni Newman, scoring his first NHL goal on that power play. And then with 2:29 left, Savard takes a tripping penalty on I believe it was Andre Burakovsky, and Berniers gets the deflection in the high slot to tie the game. I think we need to come to an understanding that when the Canadiens decided they weren't trading anybody, it was an investment in this team's immediate future. They want this team to be a not a contender right now, but they want to give them the chance to understand what it's like to play in the playoffs as this group, right? And to play meaningful playoff games at the Bell Center with a full crowd, which even the guys who were here for the last run, they haven't experienced it. The only guy on this roster who's experienced that is Brendan Gallagher, and that was a long time ago. I just think that looking at that pairing through that lens of we need to get to the playoffs, they have not been anywhere near good enough over the last few games. Xhekaj in this one, 15% expected goals while he was on the ice. I know the rest of the team didn't do great either, but he got caved. He got caved. He took a lot of penalties, including one that was a defensive penalty against Adam Larsson, who somehow got to drive his knee into Jakub Dobic's head with impunity. I don't know. They got together and talked about it, and they somehow still got the call wrong, which I just find so irrationally stupid that you can get together as a group and, the three hall monitors huddle and still get it wrong. I have a really hard time with NHL officiating
That's a
in that
reputation
respect.
call for Xhekaj for sure.
Yes, it's something we talked about before we started recording, which is that this is what I want people to do when Arber Xhekaj takes a penalty where he is jumping in to defend a teammate who was wronged in some way. Watch how every time that happens, the referees grab Arber Xhekaj. Two referees are grabbing him and shoving him to the penalty box, and nobody else is getting touched. They are giving him a police escort to the box, and nobody else gets touched. Adam Larsson drove his knee into his goalie's head, and Arber Xhekaj is the villain in this instance. He has a reputation, and it's why he gets a lot of the calls, on him that other players in this game wouldn't have gotten, and it's why I think in that instance they were cool letting Adam Larsson get away with that, because it's like, well, Xhekaj flips out about everything, even though at this point in his career he really doesn't.
No, he doesn't.
Um,
And honestly, Xhekaj has had such a good year overall, right?
yeah,
There's been
it's a
little
bad
things like this.
stretch.
Yeah, it's a bad stretch. There's been little games or, a few games in a row of this. But overall, he's been so good at controlling those impulses, being the one to draw the penalty instead of take the penalty. And so for this to kind of be one of those things where it's like it doesn't matter what he does, he's not going to get redeemed is really frustrating. And the
Yeah,
other thing too is that it's not that he didn't deserve the other two calls he got. It's not that. It's that they didn't call them on other guys when they did the same things, right?
yeah,
And it's so like this reputation thing, like he has to understand that he is fighting he's fighting a like he's starting off already with losing the battle, right?
yep,
So I also do think though that part of the reason why, we're talking about how defensively he wasn't good, et cetera, is the pairing he's on. He's
yeah.
not currently thriving, right?
No,
And so part of that is not his fault. Like he has to, it's impossible for him to be perfect, but he has to do that in order to stay out
yeah,
of the penalty box.
yeah. And while we're talking about that pairing, let's shift focus to the other guy, David Savard, who I'm not going to say this nicely. He can't skate anymore, man. Like he
Yeah.
just can't keep up at an NHL speed. The penalty he took at the end of the third period, he goes into the corner, or should I say the correct? I think the Kraken put it in his corner on purpose because they knew it would be an easier battle. Burakovsky picks it up, and Savard just can't stick with him. He cannot hang with NHL speed at this point in his career. Savard then chases him to the top of the slot, nearly to the blue line, and then trips him. And I know people were saying, "Oh, it's a soft call." Yeah, but the problem is not the call; it's that he got burned like 3 times on the same shift, and that's the guy they have to put out there to win these games in the end of the game, because he's not putting Lane Hutson out there to shut down the at an NHL level right now. And Jaden Strubal's probably not getting that opportunity. It's really Matheson and Savard, who, by the way, Matheson looked really great again. He had a really great night. We can do the Matheson meter if you'd like.
Well, we
I don't
have
know if
to now. It's a
we
tradition.
have to. I'm gonna put him at a 3.5.
Okay.
I think
Three and a
that's
half.
what I'm looking at here. I think he was quite good.
Okay.
But yeah, the real challenge here is that they do not have a reserve defenseman on the NHL roster. They
That can do
they
those things.
that would do any. They don't have one. They don't. There's none. The only one that they have is currently skating in Broussard because he got his leg cut open, and they're hoping he'll play again this year. Like that can't be their only shot. I know they want Laval to win games. I understand that, and I know they want to ease Reinbacher back in. I'm not calling him up to the NHL this season. He stays in
No.
Laval for the
Yeah.
time being. But it would be nice to maybe have a Logan Mailloux come up, and maybe at this point in the season he could be hungry and prove that he can be part of this team for the run into the playoffs if they should make it. Because right now there's no, I mean, and I know they're professionals, and Savard's definitely a pro's pro and a vet at that, but like there's no way to hold them accountable if there's no repercussions for their play,
Yeah.
right? He can't bench Savard. He can't bench Xhekaj because what are the
Just
other
all their
options?
bodies.
Playing Lane Hutson 35 minutes a night, like that can't be the solution. So
Yeah.
they're kind of just stuck, which is unfortunate, but like that's the way I see it. I don't know if I'm alone in that.
No, what I was thinking though is what about in those moments, not throughout the whole game, but in those moments, maybe throwing Struble out there and seeing what happens.
Keep collecting information, right? You don't know, like next year, more defensemen are coming into this. We kind of expect that Mayu's going to make the jump, that Reinbacher's going to make the jump. There's not enough roster spots for all of them. Like you should use this opportunity to get information on Xhekaj and Struble instead of, and I know that's the challenge that they're in right now is development and understanding the players they have, but also they want to win. The
They want to
result
win
matters
games.
to them more than anything right now. So that's
Absolutely.
the balance that they have to play, and it's a real struggle to sort of square both of those ideas on some nights.
Absolutely. In our next segment, I have been promised, I believe you said it was a doozy of a trivia question.
Yes.
I have been promised that, but before we get into that, we talked a lot about the stuff that didn't go well, but a whole bunch of stuff also did. We want to, praise some players before we get on to our Friday mailbag episode tomorrow. So our final segment with happy thoughts is coming up in just a moment. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. I've got my eye on a few underdogs this year, and FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit fanduel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. Whenever I hear about March Madness, honestly, I get anxious because it means the season's almost over. The hockey season's almost over. All right, let's talk about some good things that happened. I, for one, would like to give some flowers to start with to Alex Newhook. I thought he had a fantastic game tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he was great. He's really effective when he's using his speed and moving his legs, and he did that, especially. I mean, him scoring a 4-on-4 goal seems like the most Alex Newhook play of all time because he has all that open ice. It's a
Hmm.
shame we don't really see him too much in overtime. We probably should.
Yeah,
That seems like
Marty.
that seems like the best time to use him. And I mean, no one was going to get any time to see anybody in overtime in this game.
It took like what,
So
2 seconds for
five,
Montour to score?
five, but who's counting? It doesn't really matter. If it's five, it's one. It doesn't matter at this point. But
You know what the
uh,
Canadians should do is they should trade for Montour, so this doesn't have to happen
oh, the old Eric Cole treatment. I understand. Yeah. I like that.
um,
I'll also throw it over to the Bone Zone, Lane Hutson. He
mhm.
picked up 2 more points. He's at 51. He's the first rookie this season to pass 50 points. He is now 14 away from passing Chris Chelios, 13 to tie, 14 to pass him. With what game was this? 65. So, man, they've 17 games left. He needs 13 points. It's going to be close, but
It's
I
not
mean,
impossible.
it's very
Not
possible.
impossible.
The one downside is Cole Caulfield did not score, so he still remains 8 goals away from 40. But
40.
there's like he needs a goal every 2 games essentially at the rate that he's going. So
And it's gonna
that
be one of those things where like all the players are trying to feed him, right? Like it's
yeah,
gonna get into one of those.
yeah, definitely. And his line mate, Juraj Slafkovsky, 2 goals,
Two
including
goals.
his 100th career point on a goal that he didn't look like he thought was going to count. He deflected it with a high stick, and he kind of stood there like, man, they're going to look at this, and my stick was really high in the air.
Yeah. Also, like the body language of like every Seattle Kraken on the ice was immediately like, no.
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that. And I honestly like when that happened, I was like, oh, it's gonna bite us in the butt later. And it
I
didn't.
don't know. I mean, that maybe because I think if they had called that no goal and they reviewed it, they probably would have also kept it as no goal. I think it was just there's not conclusive evidence because we're still using cameras that can't catch a puck going that fast or a stick going that fast without turning into a blur. Instead of
Yeah.
using the chip that's already in the puck to try to determine whether it's in the net, we're using cameras that are hundreds of feet away. Anyway, it's stupid. It's such a stupid run league. It's so bad.
I will say it looked extremely inconclusive to me. Initially, it looked high, and then I was like, "No, that's good." And then so like I just thought about it. It looked inconclusive to me too.
Yeah, can I say something though? It's 2025. Inconclusive is not an option. I'm sorry, like it's just it can't be. Is this a league or not? Like is this I can't understand why inconclusive is still like, yeah, we're a-okay with that. No, we shouldn't be. Like you guys took this to review and we sat there for a while and then you just went, we can't figure it out. And that was that you were cool with that? Like I'm not. It helps my team, and yet it'll still bother me to know like they couldn't see it, and that was fine for them.
Yeah.
Anyway. Yeah, and look, we talked about him. We talked Suzuki. Also, he grabs another point, keeps his
2 points.
2 points. Correct. I said 1 point earlier as well. I just keep forgetting that. He's building quite a cushion for himself if he somehow were to take a step back and miss a few points in a few games. So that's looking more and more likely for him. I think I will breathe a sigh of relief when he hits 80. Once he hits 80, I'm like, we're cool because he can fall forward into 2 points. No problem. Like once he hits 80, I'm good. And Patrick Laine comes back into the lineup. We mentioned him earlier. If you spent the last few days trying to shovel dirt on this guy, I don't know what to tell you. Like he wasn't feeling well. He was under the weather. People are acting like he made a personal choice that he just didn't want to play for the Canadiens over the last 2 days, which is ridiculous. And I don't know if you guys know this, but he has the most dangerous shot on the team, and that's not changing because he had the flu. And he had his knee blown out earlier this year, and the fact that he's playing at all right now is still kind of astounding.
Yeah.
Next year, he's going to play with a legitimate second-line center, and this guy named Ivan Demidov, don't know if you've heard of him, but, like, that's going to be a lot of fun. Everyone needs to, like, get off of Patty's back.
Yeah.
Like he's playing fine especially like considering the context that he's playing in, he's fine.
Leave Patty alone.
Leave Patty alone and Matheson. And I think that's it. Those are really the two, the two guys that we are defending. Like remember Nick Ehlers when he was standing over the guy, I don't remember who got hit for the Jets, but he was like standing over protecting the guy or whatever.
Yeah.
That's us. But behind us is Mike Matheson and Patrick Laine. We should touch quickly on the mix. They only pick up a point, Montreal, in this one, so they are 1 point back of Columbus for the second wildcard spot. However, Columbus has a game at hand. That's why winning this one would have been a little bit more important. Also, winning it in regulation would have been important because that would have tied them with Columbus with 23 regulation wins. That's the first tiebreaker at the end of the season. After that, it's regulation and overtime wins, and Montreal has that by 2. So as long as they are tied in regulation wins and the regulation and overtime wins stay roughly the same, Montreal will pass them if they should be tied in points as well. So that stuff's going to start to matter down the stretch. They need to pick up points, not only 2 points every night, but regulation wins might be the difference between making it and not. So
yes, absolutely.
Something to keep an eye on.
All right. Is it time for our trivia?
It is, because it's very late and we need to go to bed. Yesterday's question was a follow the player path. Dallas, Montreal, Vancouver, Winnipeg, Minnesota, Toronto. Laura, it was 24 hours ago now, and we've probably each collectively gotten 7 hours of sleep. But do you remember who it was?
Yes, it was Jordy Ben.
Correct. The bearded wonder, Jordy Ben, Joe Segredo, and Good Sport picking up the win on that one. Thanks for writing that in. Okay, today's question. I'm very interested in the early days of the NHL with regards to how the early Stanley Cups were won. They were challenge series between the National Hockey Association and then the National Hockey League and the rival league that a team like the Seattle Metropolitans belonged to. Montreal and Seattle played each other a couple times for the Stanley Cup in the early 1900s. 1917, Seattle beat Montreal. It was the first time, I think it was the first time an American team had won the Stanley Cup, or at least the first time that the games have been played in the States. The captain of the Seattle Metropolitans had 14 goals in the 5-game series against the Montreal Canadiens. It was unbelievable. 2 years later, they met again in the Stanley Cup final in 1919, but they played to a 2-2 series draw because the series was stopped due to the Spanish flu. There was no Stanley Cup champion that year. their captain the Seattle captain who scored 14 goals in the previous series, he didn't play in that series. It was not because of illness. Why didn't the Seattle captain play in that series in 1919 against the Montreal Canadiens? If you have the answer, put it in the comments. If you get curious and go and Google it, that's fine, because the story is ridiculous. So have fun. Put it in the comments. You guys know how to find us. Send it to us via email. We'll shout you out on the next episode of the show.
Also, on the next episode, we will have that ridiculous story as well, because now I really, really want to know. All right, you heard Ian. Send us not just your responses to the trivia question, but please send us your mailbag questions. You can send them to us at lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. You can also DM us or tag us in our social media. We're on Instagram at Locked On Canadiens. We are on TikTok at Locked On Canadiens. We are on Bluesky at Locked On Canadiens. You can also leave mailbag questions in the YouTube comments. Please subscribe, tell your friends, make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss any of these episodes, you don't miss any mailbags, you don't miss, whatever the Canadiens do in this playoff push, and you especially do not miss the trivia answers. You'll find my co-host on social media. There you go. The nightcap is back on social media.
If you stuck around, you got it. So congrats.
Maybe it's Ian, and you will find me at the Active Stick. I want to thank everyone so much for listening, and we will talk to you tomorrow, hopefully not this tired.